Hello, I'm Lin Pardey. Together with Larry, I've voyaged for almost 45 years, sailed 200,000 miles. We built our boats to sail on, had an amazing time on a very limited budget, found we could earn our way as we cruised. And the reason I'm talking today is I want to encourage you to get out, have an adventure. Don't put it off. One of the hardest parts about going off cruising, going off on any adventure, is that very few people will encourage you. In fact, I often say, nobody wants you to go cruising. Your parents don't want you to go because they'll worry about you. If you have kids, they don't want you to go because you'll stop taking care of them. Your boss, he's not going to encourage you because if you leave, he'll have to train someone else to do your job. The people who sell you boat equipment, magazines, they don't want you to go. You'll stop buying from them. And your friends, they don't often want you to go for several reasons. Sure, they'll miss you. But also, if you actually take off and pursue your dream, it'll make them wonder why they haven't tried to do the same. It'll make them feel challenged. So it's up to you to make the decision that you want to go. And I'll tell you one thing. Once you actually start off on that adventure, you get away, you'll find a lot more encouragement from the very people who were either disapproving or lacked enthusiasm for your idea. So get out, plan a dream, and go for it. What are some of the best ways to learn how to sail? Well, right in the beginning, let me say, I really think learning to sail in small boats pays off. Boats under 20 feet. The reason? Because of their smaller size, they react more quickly, so you'll see what happens each time you change the trim of the sails. You'll understand the dynamics of sailing, and if you choose the right weather, the right times, to get your first bit of practice in, I think you can learn to love sailing as much as I do. So much so that Larry and I actually chose to sail our cruising boats engine-free. But how do you get that experience? There are many clubs that you can join. You can go down to your local yacht club, and quite often they have a board where you can put your name up to crew with other people. But one of the secret ways that a lot of my friends have gotten a chance to get out on the water, look for groups called Sailability, Sailors with Disabilities. On the Chesapeake Bay, there's Crab. These are groups that own their own boats and are always looking for volunteers and often have a free sailing day where anyone can join in and get out on the water. But if you volunteer with them, of course, then you'll have a chance to use their boats also. You can also consider hitchhiking across oceans. There are certain ports around the world where people put their name up when they're looking for crew to go across a big stretch of water. And that is another way of getting experience. I have friends who have literally hitchhiked around the world on other people's cruising boats. So get down to the waterfront, look around, ask questions. There's many ways to get out there besides having to own your own boat right in the beginning. And the more times you go out, the more different boats you go out on, the more likely you'll be able to choose well when it comes time to own your own. Don and Riley asked me to comment about the idea of going cruising if you have children already. Let me just say that I think children are the best reason to go cruising. I've had wonderful experiences with children I've met along the way, of children on other cruising boats. And what's even more fun is I've been able to keep track of them as I grew up. And I've seen what amazing adults many of them grew into. The advantage of cruising with your children on board is you get to be a much larger influence on their life than if they were going to school, living a normal life ashore. Disadvantage, of course, it's a little bit harder for you. But I really care so much about encouraging people to take their children cruising that, if you excuse the slightly blatant advertisement, I published Voyaging with Kids, written by 3 couples who have been cruising with their children for years. But the part that I love best about what we all put together is the chapter written by 12 former cruising kids about what they gained from going voyaging with their parents. And the underlying note is each of them really has stayed close friends with the parents who had the guts, shall we say, to go off and take them along on an adventure. The question I'm asked most frequently about cruising is, how much does it cost? How do we get the finance together? Let me tell you that it'll cost as much as you're willing to put into it, and you'll never have enough money saved up to cruise off forever. Why do I say that? Because when you start getting money together, you always say, well, I need a bit more. The more you have, the more tempted you are to spend far too much money on the boat itself. So be very practical, but be willing to consider going with a boat that others might not say is perfect. I feel that you can get off cruising in a 24-footer, 2 people, if you choose the right one. And the neat thing that's happened over the last several years, there's a lot of really good second-hand fiberglass boats on the market at amazingly affordable prices. They might not be fancy. They might need a little bit of sweat equity, as we call it, putting your own labor into fixing it up. But there are boats down in the $20,000 and $30,000 bracket that, if you're willing to keep the gear really simple, willing to accept that you're not going to have all the conveniences of a shore life, you can get away with them and get off sailing and exploring. Probably $30,000, $35,000 total investment. And when you're out there, how much does it cost to go cruising? I have friends who are today out cruising on $800 a month and enjoying it. They're being a bit Spartan. $1,000 a month would let those same people go out for dinner a couple times each week in port. So it's up to you to consider your costs. Larry and I've written quite a bit about keeping costs in control, but looking at your finances. If you're a young person right now, under 40, just get a boat and go. Don't worry about what's saving up for the future. If you're over 40, I guess you have to be a bit more practical and say, well, let's make sure I have some finances in the bank after I've bought the boat and after I've had it off cruising, so it's easier if I decide to come home and start a different lifestyle.